So this is the AK4500 stabilizer with the additional cage, dual handle grip cage, I believe is what they call it. This is actually like my personal preference. And in just a minute, I'll show you the nice part about the different options that you actually have. This is separate from the actual AK4500 itself when you purchase it. However, I 100% recommend that this is definitely almost a must-have to add on to it, and makes the whole experience so much better. So now that I have it turned around so we can get a little bit of a different look at the stabilizer and the whole setup itself, one of the first things you probably notice is the 2 feet actually holding it up on its own. This is one of my favorite things and comes in so handy. Now personally, I actually came from a DJI Ronin M, and the one thing that is super frustrating sometimes is when you're out shooting and you need to set down the stabilizer to maybe rebalance it, or you need to do something and move something. It's kind of a pain in the butt to be holding a stabilizer and having to do something else and not being able to just set it down without a separate stand. So the fact that this has 2 feet on it here that you can literally just swing in and out on this little pivot here, having that makes it so much more convenient. You can set it down just as it is, rebalance it, set it down, fix something on a car, move something out of your shot, or simply just take a break. So go ahead and coming to the stabilizer itself, you can see here with the little LCD screen and the little button menu that you actually have some nice onboard features that I'll get to in just a second. Another thing that I like to point out, which is one of my absolute favorites, is this. So right here, you have this little lock here. You have one for each axis, and what it does is you can lock it and unlock it. So now it can swivel, and then you can lock, which you can see it's not actually balanced, so it wants to kind of swing freely. So it comes in super handy when you need to balance a certain section, which a lot of other stabilizers don't have. What you can do is come in here, you can lock this axis here so that you can just focus on balancing this axis first, right? And once you have all of that balanced, you would normally keep that unlocked. So let's say that this is currently perfectly balanced. Now you can come in here and worry about balancing this axis separately, which it comes in so handy because when you are balancing a certain axis, sometimes those other axes being unbalanced as well can cause a little bit of frustration trying to keep everything still and work on just one part of it. Now we're going to go ahead and come into here, which is the control panel, and you can just simply turn it on by holding down the power button. Then you're greeted with the Fieyutech logo, and right off the bat you'll notice here some different options. So one of the things that I like about this that you don't have on something like a Ronin M is all these controls. So right off the bat you have this joystick here which you can control all of your axis tilt, and then you have this knob here as well which you can program for a couple things. And you see right off the bat you have different modes. You can lock it, so that will make the camera here stay in place and not move. And then over here as well you have different axes, so this will only move this axis, this will move both of these axes, and this will move in every direction that you point the camera. So when you come in here, this is actually a touch screen as well, so you can swipe between these different modes here. One of the cool additions is this mode here called Inception mode. Now when you go into this, it'll flip the camera like you see here, which the only downside to the cage is this mode specifically. You can't use this mode in this configuration simply because it forces the camera vertical, and as you can see, you have a bar here in the way. Now, this doesn't mean that this mode is completely useless, because as I'll show you in a minute, there is a separate configuration with this whole stabilizer, which makes it really cool and versatile. Now, another thing is when you do this mode, you actually have to end up unplugging your external monitor, if you do use one, simply because what it's going to do is spin your camera. What is nice is you can actually come into the menu here, you choose which direction you want it to go. This will be infinite, so it'll only stop once you tell it to stop. And so when you do select one of these modes, which I'll do here and give you an example, it'll do a full revolution spinning the camera. So this is kind of a weird mode that you wouldn't necessarily right off the bat, like, what would you use this for? But I'll show you in just a second a really cool application, and what comes in really handy that, again, is not as easy to do with any other stabilizer. Now in addition to here as well, which is something that I haven't been able to use myself just for the simple fact that I honestly don't necessarily have a full use for this, but as a motion time lapse, you can actually come in here and you can select a time lapse setting. So what you'll do is you'll actually move the gimbal into the placement that you want and select a certain amount of time that you want it to do the time lapse over. So let's say you want to do a 10-minute time lapse of a certain scene. What it'll do is it'll take that 10-minute mark if you set it for a 10-minute time lapse, and it'll start in the position you want it, and it'll actually rotate for that full 10 minutes to give you a motion time lapse instead of doing a simple standard static time lapse like you would normally get by setting up a camera or a GoPro or anything on a tripod. Now you can also see a selfie in a portrait mode, which what this will do is it'll spin the camera around for you if you want to do like a vlog style. Now, one of the other cool things here is you actually have a lock button here, which if you're using one of these certain modes and you don't want to accidentally touch the screen and move it, if you just press this button here, it'll lock this LCD, so you can't accidentally select a different mode. Now what's also cool is while I have this in portrait mode, what I can do back here is this button on the back, you can actually double press this and it'll send the camera back to its middle center. Now this comes in really handy sometimes, especially if you were to accidentally hit this without locking your screen, and now you move the camera and maybe it gets off-centered. So you can just come in here, double tap that, and it'll recenter the camera, pointing the direction that it's supposed to. All right, so one of the cooler things Fieyutech includes with the AK4500 is a case. Now because of the styrofoam, it could definitely take a decent beating and keep all of your equipment safe. The only downside to it is because of this is not the actual AK4500 like stock setup, it's not meant for the whole cage system. It's meant for a stock mode, and if you were to just purchase the AK4500 by itself, which I'll show you right now. All right, so this is the AK4500 in its most simplest form, and is actually super convenient because there's not every time where you're gonna be wanting to have that full cage setup, and it's not gonna be the easiest thing to lug around or even fit into tight areas where you're shooting. So something like this comes in really handy, especially say if I'm trying to get rollers of another vehicle from something like this. I'm not going to be able to use that cage easily to stick out this window. However, this gives me so much more room to play with to be able to shoot rollers out of a sedan if I don't have access to something like a hatchback or a minivan or anything that I can easily come out of the back or side door of. So something like this is super handy, especially for situations like that. And here, this is the best part. If you notice, this is the same grip that was on the side of the cage. It uses the same thing. You just detach the actual gimbal here and detach the tripod mount here, which again, one of my favorite parts is being able to set the stabilizer down without having to worry about lugging around another stand for something like a Ronin M. Now, another thing you may have noticed since I've just explained that this detaches, and this detaches, it's almost like a little Lego piece. And that being said, one of my other favorite parts is this right here with the actual camera mounts to. This has a quick release plate, so I can quickly flip this switch here and now my camera can come off. So if I want to take a break from shooting video and maybe I want to go take some still images, I can easily just come over here, detach that, and not have to worry about at all about the camera coming unbalanced, which is huge. I can't tell you how many times it's so frustrating. You want to take your camera off of another stabilizer that doesn't have a quick release plate, but at the same time you really don't, just for the simple fact that you don't want to have to rebalance the camera. In addition to that, what I haven't mentioned either is this thing holds up to 4.6 kilograms, I believe it is, which is roughly just barely over 10 pounds. And this setup here alone is like maybe half of that, if not a little bit less than half of that. All right, so back to one of the features that I mentioned in the beginning of the video called Inception Mode that we can't do with the cage. I'm gonna show you how it works with this configuration here. So again, you come here to the touchscreen menu here, you just swipe over to the right, hit Inception Mode, and that will put the camera already facing directly upwards or vertical. So what you can do here, again, if you click this here, this is the infinite turning to the right. So now it's gonna roll to the right until you tell it to stop. Up here you see the speed. You can go ahead and adjust the speed of that and it'll go faster depending on how fast you want it to go. Now using it at one of the lower speeds like this is probably going to be the most useful and make the most sense just because it's simply going to be easier to control. But it is also cool if you were to somehow have an application to have it go really fast, you can. Now here you have another attachment here that goes in here. I don't have the screws in just for the simple fact of just saving time and just showing you because this isn't how I'm going to use it in the examples of footage that I showed you today. This is just to show you really quick how this works. So you just have this extra handle where you can have another grip from to hold the stabilizer from in case maybe you want, you know, another place to hold the stabilizer from, but you don't want to commit to having a full cage and being as bulky. This gives you another great point to hold it from, and what it lets you do is it lets you get another grip here where you can actually hold the camera a lot lower to the ground by giving you a side handle rather than just holding all the weight from this little point here. Now in addition, what they also have is this little guy. This is like the remote controller, which as you notice, resembles a lot of the actual stabilizer brains itself. So what you can actually do is take this and actually replace where this handle goes, and now you not only have another grip, but you also have another way to control the stabilizer. So you can use these wheels here to actually move the stabilizer in a certain direction that you want. instead of just using the joystick. So one of the cool other things about this guy is if you just hold the power button here, just like on the actual stabilizer, what this will do is turn this on, and these here actually connect by Bluetooth. Now, one of the cool other features about this that I'm not really sure what I would use it for, but it's cool to have. What you can actually do is with this button back here, if you actually click and hold and move this, the stabilizer will follow its movement. So now you can see I'm actually using this as a literal remote control. And again, just like the other one, you can use this back button here to double tap it, and it will return the stabilizer back to its center point. All right, so that's pretty much everything about the stabilizer. Now, my final thoughts is this a great buy? Absolutely. The question you're probably most concerned about is it worth your money, and should you get it? And my answer to that is absolutely. It's a great stabilizer. There's tons of features. Now, with my shooting style personally, I wouldn't want to get the stabilizer without the cage, simply because when I'm shooting, I like the feeling of having that full control grip on the stabilizer. Now, if you're wanting just a monopod, then absolutely, this is a great buy. And even if you're just getting started, I definitely recommend this, because for the price, all the features that you get, and knowing that you can later on upgrade and just get that external cage that works with everything here is one of the greatest things. So that being said, all in all, that's my review. Is it a good purchase? Absolutely.